From the Iliad, from Book 6, Hector Returns to Troy, by Homer, translated by Robert Fagles. Focus. In the following scene, Hector's wife pleads with her husband to stay in the city with her. As you read, look for the reasons that she gives. After Achilles withdraws from the war, the fighting between Trojans and Greeks begins again. Even without their best warrior, the Greeks do well on the battlefield. Hector, fearful that the Greeks are near victory, returns to Troy and tells the Trojans to ask the goddess Athena for help. He then visits his wife and child. Hector's wife, Andromache, pleads with him to stay in the city. At that, Hector spun and rushed from his house, back by the same way down the wide, well-paved streets, throughout the city until he reached the Scaean gates, the last point he would pass to gain the field of battle. There, his warm, generous wife came running up to meet him, Andromache, the daughter of gallant-hearted Eetion, who had lived below Mount Placus, rich with timber, in Thebe, below the peaks, and ruled Cilicia's people. His daughter had married Hector, helmed in bronze. She joined him now, and following in her steps, a servant holding the boy against her breast, in the first flush of life, only a baby, Hector's son, the darling of his eyes and radiant as a star. Hector would always call the boy Scamandrius. Townsmen called him Astyanax, lord of the city, since Hector was the lone defense of Troy. The great man of war breaking into a broad smile, his gaze fixed on his son, in silence. Andromache, pressing close beside him and weeping freely now, clung to his hand, urged him, called him. "Reckless one, my Hector, your own fiery courage will destroy you. Have you no pity for him, our helpless son, or me, and the destiny that weighs me down, your widow, now so soon? Yes, soon they will kill you off, all the Achaean forces massed for assault, and then, bereft of you, better for me to sink beneath the earth. What other warmth, what comforts left for me, once you have met your doom? Nothing but torment. I have lost my father. Mother's gone as well. Father, the brilliant Achilles laid him low when he stormed Cilicia's city filled with people, Thebe with her towering gates. He killed Eetion, not that he stripped his gear, he'd some respect at least, for he burned his corpse in all his blazoned bronze, then heaped a grave mound high above the ashes, and nymphs of the mountain planted elms around it, daughters of Zeus, whose shield is storm and thunder. And the 7 brothers I had within our halls, all in the same day went down to the house of death. The great godlike runner Achilles butchered them all, shining flocks. And mother, who ruled under the timberline of woody Placus once, he no sooner hailed her here with his other plunder than he took a priceless ransom, set her free, and home she went to her father's royal halls, where Artemis, showering arrows, shot her down. You, Hector, you are my father now, my noble mother, a brother too, and you are my husband, young and warm and strong. Pity me, please. Take your stand on the rampart here, before you orphan your son and make your wife a widow. Draw your armies up where the wild fig tree stands, there where the city lies most open to assault, the walls lower, easily overrun. 3 times they have tried that point, hoping to storm Troy. Their best fighters led by the great and little Ajax, famous Idomeneus, Atreus' sons, valiant Diomedes. Perhaps a skilled prophet revealed the spot, or their own fury whips them on to attack. Pause and reflect. Why is it so important to Andromache that Hector not return to the battlefield? Focus. Hector is determined to fight, even though he believes that Troy is doomed. As you read, pay attention to his reasons for fighting, as well as his worries about his wife's future. And tall Hector nodded, his helmet flashing. All this weighs on my mind too, dear woman. But I would die of shame to face the men of Troy and the Trojan women trailing their long robes if I would shrink from battle now, a coward. Nor does the Spirit urge me on that way. I've learned it all too well, to stand up bravely, always to fight in the front ranks of Trojan soldiers, winning my father great glory, glory for myself. For in my heart and soul I also know this well. The day will come when sacred Troy must die. Priam must die, and all his people with him. Priam, who hurls the strong ash spear. Even so, it is less the pain of the Trojans still to come that weighs me down, not even of Hecuba herself, or King Priam, or the thought that my own brothers, in all their numbers, all their gallant courage, may tumble in the dust, crushed by enemies. That is nothing, nothing beside your agony, when some brazen Argive hails you off in tears, wrenching away your day of light and freedom. Then far off in the land of Argus you must live, laboring at a loom, at another woman's beck and call, fetching water at some spring, Messias or Hypereia, resisting it all the way, the rough yoke of necessity at your neck. And a man may say, who sees you streaming tears, there is the wife of Hector, the bravest fighter they could field, those stallion-breaking Trojans, long ago, when the men fought for Troy. So he will say, and the fresh grief will swell your heart once more, widowed, robbed of the one man strong enough to fight off your day of slavery. No, let the earth come piling over my dead body before I hear your cries. I hear you dragged away. In the same breath, shining Hector reached down for his son, but the boy recoiled, cringing against his nurse's full breast, screaming out at the sight of his own father, terrified by the flashing bronze, the horsehair crest, the great ridge of the helmet nodding, bristling terror so it struck his eyes. And his loving father laughed. His mother laughed as well. And glorious Hector, quickly lifting the helmet from his head, set it down on the ground, fiery in the sunlight, and raising his son, he kissed him, tossed him in his arms, lifting a prayer to Zeus and the other deathless gods. Zeus, all you immortals, grant this boy, my son, may be like me, first in glory among the Trojans, strong and brave like me, and rule all Troy in power, and one day let them say, he is a better man than his father, when he comes home from battle, bearing the bloody gear of the mortal enemy he has killed in war, a joy to his mother's heart. So Hector prayed, and placed his son in the arms of his loving wife. Andromache pressed the child to her scented breast, smiling through her tears. Her husband noticed, and filled with pity now, Hector stroked her gently, trying to reassure her, repeating her name. Andromache, dear one, why so desperate? Why so much grief for me? No man will hurl me down to death against my fate. And fate? No one alive has ever escaped it. Neither brave man nor coward. I tell you, it's born with us the day that we are born. So please, go home and tend to your own tasks, the distaff and the loom, and keep the women working hard as well. As for the fighting, men will see to that, all who were born in Troy, but I most of all. Hector, aflash in arms, took up his horse-hair-crested helmet once again, and his loving wife went home, turning, glancing back again and weeping live, warm tears. She quickly reached the sturdy house of Hector, man-killing Hector, and found her women gathered there inside and stirred them all to a high pitch of mourning. So in his house they raised the dirges for the dead, for Hector still alive. His people were so convinced that never again would he come home from battle, never escape the Argives' rage and bloody hands.